World War II, the words themselves conjure images of epic battles, entire cities in ruins, and a world torn apart. It was a conflict that spanned the globe, touching every continent and claiming the lives of over 70 million people. But how did we get there? What forces pushed humanity to the brink of self-destruction, and what lessons can we learn from its ashes? Join us as we journey back in time to uncover the story of the most devastating war in human history. Our story begins not in 1939, but in the aftermath of another great conflict. World War I, the so-called war to end all wars, left a scar across Europe. The Treaty of Versailles, signed in 1919, was meant to secure peace. Instead, it sowed the seeds of future conflict. Germany, burdened with heavy reparations and a war guilt clause, felt humiliated and resentful. Its economy was in shambles, and its people were desperate for a savior. Across the continent, political instability was rampant. In Italy, Benito Mussolini and his fascist party rose to power, promising to restore Roman glory. In the Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin consolidated his grip, launching brutal purges and rapid industrialization. And in Germany, a charismatic and venomous speaker named Adolf Hitler capitalized on the nation's despair. His Nazi party promised to restore German pride, reclaim lost territories, and create a racially pure empire. Meanwhile, in Asia, the Empire of Japan was embarking on its own aggressive expansion. Driven by a desire for resources and regional dominance, Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931 and launched a full-scale invasion of China in 1937. The world watched, but did little. The policy of appeasement, born from a desire to avoid another catastrophic war, allowed these aggressor nations to grow bolder. They saw the inaction of Britain, France, and the United States as a green light. The breaking point came on September 1, 1939. German forces stormed into Poland, unleashing a new form of warfare, the Blitzkrieg or Lightning War. This combined assault of tanks, planes, and infantry was designed for speed and shock, overwhelming enemy defenses before they could react. 2 days later, Britain and France, honoring their pledge to Poland, declared war on Germany. World War II had begun in Europe. In the early years, the Axis powers seemed unstoppable. Germany conquered Denmark, Norway, the Netherlands, Belgium, and France in a matter of months. The British Army was miraculously evacuated from the beaches of Dunkirk, but the continent was now under Nazi control. Hitler then turned his sights on Britain, launching the Battle of Britain, a massive air campaign aimed at crippling the Royal Air Force and paving the way for an invasion. But the RAF, though outnumbered, held firm. Never in the field of human conflict, said Winston Churchill, was so much owed by so many to so few. Frustrated in the West, Hitler made his most fateful decision. In June 1941, he launched Operation Barbarossa, a surprise invasion of the Soviet Union. This opened a vast and brutal Eastern Front that would become the war's deadliest theater. Millions of soldiers and civilians would perish in the unforgiving Russian winter and the scorched earth battles of attrition. Like the pivotal clash at Stalingrad, 6 months later, the war truly went global. On December 7, 1941, Japan launched a surprise attack on the U.S. naval base at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii. The next day, the United States declared war on Japan, and a few days later, Germany and Italy declared war on the U.S. The sleeping giant had been awakened. The industrial might of America was now fully committed to the Allied cause. Joining forces with the British Commonwealth and the Soviet Union in a grand alliance, the tide began to turn in 1942 and 1943, in the Pacific. The Battle of Midway was a decisive naval victory for the U.S., crippling the Japanese fleet. In North Africa, Allied forces drove out German and Italian troops, and on the Eastern Front, the German Sixth Army surrendered at Stalingrad, a turning point that marked the beginning of the end for Hitler's ambitions in the East. As the Allies advanced, the true horror of the Nazi regime was uncovered. The Holocaust, the systematic, state-sponsored genocide of 6 million Jews and millions of other victims, stands as one of history's darkest chapters. Concentration and extermination camps like Auschwitz, Treblinka, and Sobibor were liberated, revealing an industrial-scale machinery of death that shocks the conscience to this day. It is a stark reminder of what happens when hatred and ideology go unchecked. On June 6, 1944, D-Day arrived. Over 150,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches of Normandy in the largest amphibious invasion in history. It was a brutal, bloody fight, but it established the long-awaited Second Front in Western Europe. From the west, American, British, and Canadian forces pushed towards Germany. From the east, The Soviet Red Army relentlessly advanced. Caught in a vice, the Third Reich began to crumble. On April 30, 1945, with Soviet troops just blocks from his bunker in Berlin, Adolf Hitler committed suicide. A week later, Germany surrendered unconditionally. Victory in Europe Day, or VE Day, was celebrated with joyous relief around the world. But the war was not over. In the Pacific, Japan fought on with fierce determination. Facing the prospect of a costly invasion of the Japanese mainland, US President Harry Truman made a difficult and controversial decision. In August 1945, atomic bombs were dropped on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The devastation was unprecedented. Days later, Japan announced its surrender, officially ending World War II on September 2, 1945. Empires had fallen. New superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, stood poised for a new kind of conflict, the Cold War. The United Nations was formed in the hope of preventing future global wars. The horrors of the Holocaust gave birth to a new understanding of human rights and the concept of genocide. The war accelerated technological advancements, from radar and jet engines to computers and nuclear energy. It also transformed societies, bringing women into the workforce in record numbers and sparking civil rights movements. But its greatest legacy is the human one. It's a story of unimaginable suffering and sacrifice, but also of incredible courage, resilience, and the enduring power of the human spirit to fight against tyranny. Understanding World War II is not just about remembering dates and battles. It's about understanding the complex web of causes, the human cost of conflict, and the constant, fragile effort to build a more peaceful world.